Welcome to Lesson 6 of the Beginner Crochet series. A foundation border can be worked around the finished piece before adding a border of a different colour. I'll show you how to work into double, half treble and treble stitches using double crochet. I'll start with double crochet rows. This swatch has 5 rows and 5 stitches. The stitch markers show the stitch placement. These 3 markers on the corner are these 3 stitches. Each row has 1 stitch worked around the stitch or turning chain. Each corner has 3 stitches worked into the same stitch. The top stitches are worked as normal, then the stitches are repeated along the side and bottom. First we need to join the yarn in the side of the first row. Bring a loop through and chain 1 for the stitch height. This isn't counted as a stitch. Make 2 stitches in the same space. The first stitch is for the corner, the second for the row. The third corner stitch will be added when I work along the bottom edge, and pull the tail to tighten the chain. Now, make a stitch in each row, working into the gap at the edge. This is the 5th row and a corner, so 3 stitches need to be worked into the same space. 1 stitch is for the side of the row, 1 to make a corner, and 1 for the first stitch of the row. Now work into the stitches at the top. We're back at a corner, so 3 stitches go into the same space. Now 1 stitch into each row down the side. The last row needs 3 stitches to make a corner. Work into each chain for the bottom edge. The last stitch is the third of the first corner, so work into the same space. Finish off with a slip stitch into the top of the first stitch. And that's the border finish. My half treble swatch has a turning chain of 2, which is counted as a stitch. However, I've also started in the first stitch instead of skipping it. Just a slight variation of what we've learned so far. So the swatch has 4 rows and 6 stitches. Half trebles are slightly taller than doubles, but slightly shorter than trebles. 2 stitches are placed every other row. Each corner has 3 stitches. The green markers are for the row stitches along the top and bottom. Pink represents the corner stitch. The blue are single stitch rows, and the red markers are for the 2 stitches per row. Stitches are worked into either the chain, the top of the stitch, or into the body of the stitch. I'll leave the markers in to make it easier to follow. Join the yarn into the side of the stitch by going in between the legs of the post. There should be 2 strands over the hook. Chain 1 and work 2 stitches in the same spot. Again, the first stitch is for the corner, the second for the side of the row. The third will be worked with the bottom edge. The next row starts with a chain and will have 2 stitches. Work the first stitch into the middle link of the chain, which can be very tight sometimes. The second stitch goes into the top of the stitch. Now for a single stitch worked into the side of the stitch. Our last row will have 2 stitches plus the corner ones. Work 1 stitch into the first link of the chain and 3 into the corner chain, 1 for the side, second for the corner, and last for the chain, which is treated as a stitch for now. Work into the top of the last row as normal. Let's take a look at the corner quickly. And now it's the corner again, so 3 stitches in the same spot, 1 of which is for the side. The last row has 2 stitches, so the second is worked into the side of the stitch. This row has 1 stitch worked into the chain. Oops! Get in there! The next row has 2 stitches, so 1 into the top of the stitch. And the second into the body. Now 3 corner stitches again into the last chain. It's a little tight. For the bottom edge, just work into the foundation chain. We're back to the first corner, so we need to add a stitch in the same spot. Finish with a slip stitch into the first stitch. Working into half trebles is a little more complicated than doubles. This treble swatch has 4 rows and 6 stitches. The turning chain is counted as a stitch. The corners will still have 3 stitches, but each row has 2 stitches placed into the side. These are worked into either the chain, stitch body or top of the stitch, same as the half treble. Join the yarn to the first row. Mine starts with a treble, so I'm going into the stitch body. Start with 2 stitches in the corner space. The next stitch for this row is into the top of the stitch. The next row starts with a chain, so 1 stitch in the middle link. And 1 in the top. Now into the body of the stitch. Followed by the top of the stitch. The fourth row starts with a chain. Work into the first chain. and then the corner stitches go in the second one. One for the side, second for the corner, and last for the chain. Work along the top as usual. And then 3 stitches in the corner. The second stitch for this row is worked into the stitch body. Get in there. Continue along the edge, working 2 stitches for each row. Remember to keep an eye on whether you're working into a chain or stitch. When you reach the corner, work the 3 stitches in the same spot. Work the foundation chain. Ending with the 3rd corner stitch in the start of the border. Close with a slip knot. And we're finished. Another way to do corners is to chain 1 or 2 for the middle stitch. This is the first of my corner stitches. Now I'll chain 1 for the second stitch, and the third of my corner stitches. It's not as full as having 3 stitches. This corner is with a chain 1, this side is with a chain 2, the bottom left is the regular 3 stitches, and the last corner has 4 stitches. The method you choose depends on the final look you want. Normally the foundation border is in the same colour so it blends in better. Other colours can be worked into this, so it's important to have the same amount of stitches for opposing sides and also to be consistent with stitch placement. This tutorial is just a guide to show the basics. You may have to adjust your placement, etc. when working on other projects. The instructions are for the swatches used in this video. There's one for each stitch. They're partial patterns as I haven't included photo instructions or the gauge and all that info. The chart has a new symbol on it. This is known as an increase, which represents the corner where 3 stitches are worked into the same space. Remember, we worked an extra stitch to go around the corner. Here are the chart symbols and stitch names in both UK and US terms, along with the abbreviations. Each cross is a DC stitch. They join together to point at the same stitch. The stitches are counted individually for the stitch count. I've colour-coded the stitches according to the markers in the top picture for further clarity. This is the chain 1 to start the border, and this is the slip stitch above the first stitch to close it. Before I leave each pattern on the screen, I'd like to say, well done, you've completed the basic level of my beginner series. Continue your crochet adventure with the easy level of the series and learn simple stitch combinations, changing row colour, shaping and working in the round. At any rate, I hope you found it useful. Please leave a comment and a thumbs up. See you in lesson 7 for the mesh stitch.